is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 2019's It Chapter 2. And unlike with the first movie, I enjoyed this one more. But that's not to say this is necessarily a good movie. It's not bad, but I wouldn't call it good either. And I'm going to tell you why. First off, this movie is remarkably self-indulgent. What do I mean? This movie lasts 2 hours and 49 minutes. You heard right. 2 hours and 49 minutes. Now, if that were all about story, I would understand it, and in fact, I'd be glad for it. But this movie is so, and the only word I can describe it as is self-indulgent. There are so many scenes that could have been cut from this movie that could have brought the runtime down to, 2 hours. And maybe even more, but let's look at two scenes in particular. There's a scene with, I don't recall the young actor, but it was McAvoy's character as a young man. And he's being chased in this small park by a Paul Bunyan statue. Cut that entire scene. It was literally advancing the story, not at all. It wasn't scary. It was just an exhibition of CGI. Do we need to see that? No, we don't. We've seen plenty of CGI in this movie. That scene was just pointless, only serving to pad the running time more than anything else. There was another scene with a character who was visiting a pharmacy, and he had a flashback to when he had done so in the past. Once again, pointless scene. It didn't advance the plot. It actually even conflicted with a later part of the story, and I'll tell you what I mean in that case as well. This character had exhibited a lot of fear, and at the pharmacy, it almost appeared as if the idea was that he was facing his fears, making him a stronger person, and that would have been an interesting way to introduce that change in him. Instead, it doesn't do that at all. He goes back to being the same cowardly, and maybe that's not fair, but certainly afraid person he was prior, making that scene totally pointless. It didn't advance the plot, it didn't advance him as a character. It should have been cut. And there are other scenes like this as well. Though, there was one scene in particular that really disturbed me, and it happened at the beginning. The movie opens with these two men at a carnival. They happen to be gay, and they're being harassed by these other people. Now, the harassment of someone based upon their sexual identity is ridiculous and childish as shit. But here's where the problem comes. Xavier Dolan, who's actually a director in his own right, who was playing the gayer person, if you will, he begins to harass one of the antagonists. Now, the thing is, I would have hit him in that situation. Now, keep in mind, the response of the bully/antagonist was over the top. He literally beat him up, and threw him off a bridge into a river. But at the same time, why is he antagonizing this man? He's outnumbered. Him and his friend clearly can't defend themselves worth a damn, yet he's running off with his mouth. Shut up! I wanted to shout at the screen. Stop talking! You are making them want to hurt you. And the thing is, as that scene unfolded, you don't know if that's where it was going. In other words, if he would have shut his fucking mouth, that probably would not have happened. Would they have been beat up? Would they have been harassed? Sure. But it would have probably have ended there. But no. Instead, he's running off with his mouth, and he ends up getting killed by Pennywise a little later on, as a result of him not being able to shut his yap. Now, keep in mind something. I am not saying that it is okay to harass and beat someone because they're different. Hey, look at me. I'm clearly not saying that. What I am saying is, if you cannot defend yourself, shut the fuck up. That's what I'm saying. And this guy bought a beating on himself. And I don't know if it's a white thing, but in the African American community, you know there are times when you should shut your mouth. If you're being harassed by police, you shut up. This guy is running off with his mouth, to me, exemplified the privilege that comes with being a white person, sexual proclivities notwithstanding. Just the fact that he's a white person makes him think he could go off with his mouth like that, and he paid for it. So that was really off-putting because it didn't need to happen. All he needed to do was shut his mouth. And gotta go back to Pennywise. This is not a scary character. He's too overtly sinister. And that's not scary. That's just sinister. And it gets a bit old. And it only brings up more comparisons to Tim Curry's Pennywise, who was significantly creepier. And in fact, that's one of the biggest problems with this movie. This is not a scary movie. There's virtually no thrills to be found. The narrative is interesting. It's well acted. To see these people's lives unfold as they do, I found interesting. But this is supposed to be a horror movie, and it is not a horror movie. Not traditionally, at any rate. It is just not scary at all. So again, it's too long. It's also not scary. And when I say it's not scary, there's these scenes of these monsters and type of things, which are mainly CGI creations, and they're just not, they're interesting to watch, but I don't watch horror movies for the interest factor. I want to see creepiness. I want to be scared just a little bit. That's the whole point. And this movie does not do it at all. Can we please stop homages to John Carpenter's The Thing? John Carpenter's The Thing is a great movie. Remarkable. But these movies are so lazy. There's a scene here a homage. There's a scene in this movie that takes the entire head-growing legs scene from John Carpenter's movie. And again, as I said, I get it, it's a homage, but this is not an uncommon homage. I wish they just quit it. Be innovative. Do something that someone hasn't seen before. Carpenter innovated. Maybe it's about time other movie makers do the same. It Chapter 2 is, as I said, better than the first. Unfortunately, it's not a very good horror movie. It's an interesting character study, but it doesn't really make sense in a lot of ways, and it fails at the thing that, as a horror movie, it should have succeeded at, namely, being a horror movie. If you're a completist, you probably want to see this if you haven't already. But if you're looking for a genuine thrill, watch John Carpenter's The Thing, because you're not going to find it here. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace.